everybody, and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a space where we talk about creativity, making things, working with clients, operating a small business, and trying to do all of this and balance all of this while having ADHD. My name is Rachel. I'm the owner and operator of Rachel Simpson Media, and welcome. So today I really wanted to talk about service contracts, which if you're a creative person, you might think that sounds really boring. And let's be honest, it kind of is. It's not the most exciting part of creative work. It can feel monotonous to put them together. It can feel kind of tedious. But what I have found as a small business owner and as a creative professional who works one-on-one with clients a lot, a contract when you're doing client work can be an absolute lifesaver. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Grab your beverage of choice. Mine is Earl Grey tea today, and let's get into service contracts. So as a creative, as somebody who works with clients, why would you want to focus on having a service contract? Can't you just kind of handshake it with people and go about your creative process and do your thing? And to be honest, sometimes, yeah, you can do that. But I've found that having a service contract can be incredibly helpful for a number of reasons. First thing that a service contract can be really helpful for is clarification around a project. You know, a lot of the times when I am working with a new client, one of the first things that we'll do is set up a consultation. And this is usually either face-to-face over coffee, or it is over like a video chat, sometimes a phone call, but I try and get people face-to-face if we're meeting for the first time. And what the service contract does following that consultation, it allows me the opportunity to take the points of what we discussed in that meeting, in that consultation, and actually get them in writing. And what this can do is, for one thing, it helps me to notice where maybe the holes were in that conversation, maybe things that we didn't talk about initially, and it allows me to ask good follow-up questions so that we have really good clarification going into the project. The other thing it does is it provides the client the opportunity to look over the contract, look at the scope of work, look at the price quoted and the timeline and kind of all the details. And it's an opportunity for them to say, yes, this is what we talked about and this looked good, or oh no, actually we forgot this point, can you add it in? And so what that means is from the very onset of a project, I'm able to get really, really accurate specifications around what exactly we're making and on what timeline and kind of some of the logistical details around that. The second thing that a contract is really good for is boundary setting. I've got a little bit of a people pleaser streak, and so it can be really hard for me to set good, healthy boundaries. It's something that I am actively working on, and actually a service contract is a space where I'm able to practice that healthy boundary setting. So one of the big examples is I have a section in my service contracts about turnaround time. So if I say something's going to take a certain amount of time, that's the amount of time it's going to take. And if I get pushback from a client on, well, can't we have it sooner? Can't we have it in half the time? It gives me a leverage point to say no, because this is what we agreed on and this is what we signed off on. So a service contract can be really helpful for establishing good boundaries. The third thing that a service contract can be really helpful for is as a reference point for a project. I have ADHD. I sometimes have problems remembering things. I have problems with my working memory. And so for me, it really helps to have things actually in writing. So when we're actually going through the creative process, when we're planning things, when we're making things, when I have to go and do a shot list, for example, I can turn back to the scope of work that we agreed on in the service project and say, okay, these are the shots that I need to include on my shot list. When it comes time to invoice at the end of a project, if I'm having a hard time remembering the price I quoted, I can go back to the service contract and say, okay, what did we agree to? That's right, it was going to be this much, and then I can invoice for the correct amount. And so the last thing that a contract is really good for is it looks damn professional. You know, it's one thing if you are doing something kind of casual with people and you just kind of shake on it and you get it done and it's casual and it's fun and it's fine, that's great. If you're running a small business, it really helps to take those steps where you look just a little bit more professional, a little bit more put together. So when you're working with clients, when you're able to produce this document that is well-defined, that's very clear on what we're doing and when we're doing it and what the price is going to be, it really encourages a lot of trust in the fact that you're actually a professional who knows what they're doing. You're going to take care of your clients and you're going to abide by your word. And part of that is that you put your word in writing. So it can foster a lot of trust. It looks really professional. It looks really polished to be able to present a contract to your clients. So now that we've gotten into some of the details of what a service contract can be really good for, let's talk about what that might look like. And for my service contracts, I tend to use a template where a lot of items are duplicated from contract to contract. Some of them are custom, some of them are not. And we're just gonna get into that. So I'm gonna give you the example of what my service contract looks like. First of all, this is not a real service contract. This is something that I put together as a sample using a template that I keep in my Google Drive. And it is based on a contract that I actually had to write up earlier this year for a photography project, but this is not a real project. Quick aside, I am not a lawyer. I am not a contract law specialist. If you write a service contract, it's not a bad idea to have a lawyer look over it and just make sure that it's actually reasonable and enforceable and that you can actually use it in a small business setting. So the first thing that I always start out with a service contract is a title page. And that's really, really simple. It's just my logo, nice and big at the top, service contract underneath that, who the contract is being prepared for, and that's the client, and who it's being prepared by, and that's me. These things don't really change except for the name of the client and the company. So again, template as much as you possibly can because it will make your life so much easier. So the next page is usually two sections. The first is just a little note to the person that I am preparing this for. So this just says, "Kay, this document is the service contract based on what we discussed during our consultation on March 1st. And usually this is the same from client to client. I just change out the first name and change out the date of the consultation. I have included some information about my company, details regarding the services I will provide, pricing and delivery details, and some terms of service. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns once you've reviewed this contract, please feel free to contact me and we can discuss further. Thank you, and I look forward to talking to you soon." And then it just has, my name and my contact information. And it's just kind of a nice personal touch that you can provide to your clients. It's just a nice little personal note, thanks for the consultation. This is what we talked about that I'd be sending you. This is what's included. Let me know if I can help in any way. And so then the next section is just a little bit about my company. And this is just basic copy that I use variations of on my website, on my social media, on anything that I need to use as a release for my company. It's pretty boilerplate. And what I also have underneath that, just as a footer, and this is going to show up on all the pages, is the date that it was last revised, who it was revised by, and again, my contact information. Okay, so the first section of the actual contract is situation. Usually the situation is just a little blurb about the company and what they do, maybe a little bit about their mission if they're a nonprofit, and it also summarizes what kind of help they're looking for and why. So with this one, K-Bob Industries is an Arizona-based small business that specializes in cosplay accessories. They are hosting an event on Friday, March 22nd, 2024, and are seeking assistance to capture photos throughout the event. Nice, simple, easy. So after I've outlined the situation section, the next thing that I move into is scope of work. And a scope of work is basically just a response to, this is what the client is looking for, so these are the services that I can provide. And so usually what I do for a scope of work is I just start it with, to fulfill this need, Rachel Simpson Media will provide the following services, and then I just list out what those might be. Now, I don't get super granular with it, but I do outline the specific things that I'll be doing, whether I'll be shooting photos or editing photos or recording video or, doing some scripting or doing publication, things like that. And then one thing that I also try and include is what sort of deliverables the client can expect. So for example, for this particular sample, I listed on-site photography, so I'll take photos throughout the duration of the event. Those will include, but are not limited to, and then I just listed out a couple of things that might be included, broad strokes, in the shot list. Again, it doesn't have to be super specific at this point, but you want to give the client a general idea of what you're going to be providing to fulfill this need that they expressed in the consultation that you had previously. And then photo editing, that I'll edit the best photos taken at the event, resulting in a minimum of a certain number of photos per hour, totaling a minimum of X. And I do this so that the client can have an idea of what kind of deliverables that they're going to be getting at the end of the project. And again, this varies. It might be a 20-minute podcast episode. It might be a 5-minute video. It might be 60 to 90 photographs. It might be print materials and digital materials for an event. Depending on the project, of course, that's going to look a little bit different, but those are the things that I really like to hit on in a service contract. The services that I'm going to be providing and the deliverables that the client is going to be getting as a result of those services. So I like to get into pricing after I get into scope of work, and basically what that does is it says, these are the things that I'll provide, these are the things that I deliver, and this is how much it's going to cost. So you can see that it's a very basic flow of information that we're going through. I establish a couple of things in pricing. The first thing is what things are going to cost. And a lot of the times I will base pricing on deliverables. Sometimes I'll price it on hourly. It really depends on the project. I mean, pricing could probably be its own video, but we're not really going to get into that. Just know that there is a section for pricing that is outlined specifically in the service contract, and that's always the first paragraph. Now, there's a line that I always include in my service contracts, and this is really, really important, and it has saved my tail I don't even know how many times. All right, if additional services are requested by K-Bob Industries outside the scope of this contract, Rachel Simpson Media will send an estimate which must be approved via email prior to providing the additional services. And if you have ever worked a creative project, you know that scope creep is a thing. It is very, very easy for clients to say, hey, while we're doing this video work, do you think that you could also do this other work for me too? And it wasn't included in the original scope in your service contract, but it's work that you can do. Without a clause like this, your options are really limited. You can either say yes, but not have any guarantee that you're going to be paid extra for the work. You can say, oh, we need another contract for that, which can just kind of provide more paperwork, more friction to actually getting the work done. Or you can say no, and then your client's kind of disappointed. And those are all fine choices. What the estimate clause does is it says, yes, but it's going to cost extra. Let me just send you something really quick and let me know if this works for you. And I've done this on, I don't even know how many projects. It has never, ever, ever been an issue. And that way, when it's in the service contract, it's just written in as part of your process and as part of your policy. So it makes it easier on you to set good boundaries. It makes it easier on the client to say yay or nay to the new price. And you can move on with the project, either with a slightly expanded scope of work or with the original scope of work. It's a really, really nice option. I put it in every single one of these. It's incredibly helpful. So then the last thing that I go through in the pricing section of the service contract is just invoicing process. So upon delivery of the edited photographs, Rachel Simpson Media will invoice K-Bob Industries for the work completed. So that says this is when you will be expecting an invoice. Do not be surprised when I send you an invoice at the end of the project. This is how I operate. K-Bob Industries will have 30 days to pay the invoice. If K-Bob Industries is unable to pay the invoice within 30 days, they must contact Rachel Simpson Media and arrange for a deferred payment plan, or exchange of services, the terms of which must be agreed upon by both Rachel Simpson Media and K-Bob Industries in writing. And I started including this because I had a client who brought up that, I was a small business working with him. He was a small business, and he said, sometimes cash flow gets a little wonky. What are your options if maybe things don't quite pan out in a certain month when I owe you money? So I started including this. I've only had to use it a couple of times, and it's worked perfectly fine, but it allows a little bit of flexibility on the payment end to where I know I'm still going to get paid, and the client knows that they can have some flexibility in payment. They just need to communicate with me. If no arrangement is agreed upon, late payments will incur a X amount late fee, and Rachel Simpson Media reserves the right to halt the provision of future services until payment is received in full. So basically that is just if they don't reach out and use their words and communicate that, hey, payment's going to be later, I can only do a partial right now. This basically just gives me the right to have a little bit of pushback on that, where I can charge a late fee if I need to, where I can halt future services if I need to make sure that I'm getting paid on time. And then the final bit is just about how clients can pay invoices. It's just invoices may be paid via check or Rachel Simpson Media's online payment options. And then I just list what those are. So then they know when they get that invoice email and it has the payment options, it has the attached invoice, it has the timeline to pay, it has all the things. It's not a surprise. It's really just about having consistency for myself and for clients throughout the process, starting with the service contract, ending with an invoice. It's all consistent. The next section following pricing is just delivery timeline. And I always include a note on there that delivery timelines reflect a typical turnaround for asset delivery, but may occasionally vary based on office closures or emergency situations. In these cases, Rachel Simpson Media will communicate any delays in delivery to K-Bob Industries with as much advance notice as possible. And I always include that note in the top because life happens, all right? And holidays happen. I usually close down for a couple of weeks in the summer and a couple of weeks at the end of the year. So delivery is going to be affected by those closures. We had a situation actually come up earlier this year where we had some medical things come up with our family and we had to spend several days in the hospital. It was my first week back after being gone for the holidays. And so I had to email clients and say, hey, I'm really sorry. I know I owed you things this week, but I'm gonna have to push back a couple of days because of what's going on. And I didn't give a lot of details, I didn't really need to, but I have this in here just as an expectation of this is the turnaround for what's most likely going to happen, but please be aware life happens and I will communicate as best I can. And it's just kind of a respectful heads up to the people that I'm working with that, you know, I'm gonna communicate with them, that I'm gonna take care of them. And even if things get a little delayed, I'm gonna use my words and let them know. So then I usually just custom write in the delivery timeline, and this is based off of whatever the scope of work is and how long that usually takes. And a lot of the times these days, I know how long things are going to take. If you're still working out your timelines, what I would suggest is write down what you think it's going to take and then add like maybe 30 to 40% to that. So if you think something is going to take 5 days, maybe stretch that to 7, just to be on the safe side. Give yourself a little bit of buffer. Be kind to yourself when you're figuring out your timelines. And if you have a timeline that's a little bit longer and you end up delivering sooner, your clients tend to be a lot happier than if you quote something sooner and then you end up being late. So for this one, I just quoted the date of the on-site photography because it was for an event. That was easy. It was going to be done that night. Following the event, I will edit and deliver the final photographs by Wednesday, April 10th. So I gave myself 2.5 weeks in this hypothetical scenario with K-Bob Industries. And then I also have a little clause in there about revisions. You know, if they were to come back and say, hey, these are great, but we noticed this thing about these photos, can you fix it? That's great. I have a turnaround time for revisions within 3 to 5 business days. And then all final photographs will be delivered via a shared access Google Drive folder. So that's the other thing, is I also include how I'm going to be delivering final assets in the delivery timeline section so that they know when they get a Google Drive link from me, from my email, they know that that's not a scam, it's not something weird. These are the photographs that they were expecting. Again, it's all about creating consistency and predictability for your clients. And then the last piece, it's really boilerplate, but I just do terms and conditions. And these I put together using a few different templates online. I kind of picked ideas for sections and then reworded them and kind of adapted them to what my process looked like, what I wanted to be able to offer clients, and then what I also wanted for myself as the creator, as the service provider. First thing I go over is copyright and ownership. Just to simplify things, I transfer ownership of the finished assets to whatever company I'm working for. I don't want to deal with licensing year over year for photographs that I did for somebody else. If you want to do it differently, knock yourself out. This is just the way that I do it. I also say that I'm not going to use captured or completed assets to create content for other clients without written permission. So if I take a photo and I'm like, ooh, that looks really good and it would look good over on this project, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask permission. And if they say no, I'm not going to use it. That's just standard treating your clients well. And then the last thing that I include is that I retain the right to share the finished deliverable assets as part of my portfolio of work and through my communication channels. So that gives me permission to share photographs I took on Instagram or video clips or design pieces, or where I can have a page on my website with my client work. I can have those pieces published as part of that. So limitation of liability is just that I shall not be held liable for any damages resulting from the client's use of services or deliverables unless I've acted or failed to act in knowing violation of the law or with intentional misconduct. Neither party shall be held liable for breach of contract damages that the breaching party could not have foreseen upon entry into the agreement, nor for breach of contract damages that are speculative or remote. So basically what that's doing in there is I'm not going to sue you unless you intentionally do something to damage me, please do not sue me unless I do something intentionally harmful to you. It's just kind of a boilerplate. We're not going to sue each other if things go sideways in ways that we couldn't have imagined. Modification. Any and all modifications to this agreement must be provided and agreed upon in writing by both parties to be considered legally binding. So it just kind of goes back to having everything in writing, making sure that everything is covered, making sure everybody's on the same page. I like having things in writing, so I have it in my contract that if we need to make changes to what we're doing, we need to both agree to that in writing. Termination. This contract shall be effective upon receiving both parties' signatures. It shall continue to be in effect until terminated by either party. Termination notices must be delivered to either party at least 30 days prior to the intended termination date. Should K-Bob Industries choose to terminate this agreement, Rachel Simpson Media will continue to provide services throughout the 30-day notice period. K-Bob Industries accepts that Rachel Simpson Media will halt all services and send a final invoice for work completed at the end of the notice period. Payment terms for this final invoice remain the same as previous invoices. So that just gives both parties an out. If we are working on a project and it's going to be a long-term project and things just aren't working for whatever reason, I have the right to back out, they have the right to back out, but we have some parameters and some boundaries about what that looks like, what final work looks like, what final payment looks like. And it just makes sure that a termination and kind of a moving on is going to be smooth and that there's actually a bit of a process in place for that. Warranties. Rachel Simpson Media warrants that should K-Bob Industries accept this contract, Rachel Simpson Media shall perform the professional services as specified herein. Should K-Bob Industries determine that services were not rendered according to the agreement, they may provide written notice to Rachel Simpson Media. Should Rachel Simpson Media determine that services did not conform to the timeline or contract agreed upon by both parties through their own fault, Rachel Simpson Media shall discount, reperform, or refund such services as necessary at no cost to K-Bob Industries. So this basically just outlines that if the contract is approved, that means I'm going to do the work that I said that I was going to do in the contract. If it's not up to par for some reason, I'm going to do another review and redo any portions that I need to, and I'm not going to charge them extra for it, because that would be a jerk move if I'm the one who screwed up in the first place. And then the last portion is just severability. Should any provision of this agreement be found to be illegal or unenforceable, that provision is severed from this agreement and is to be replaced with a provision that is substantially similar while in accordance with governing law. No severed provision shall affect any other, and all other provisions shall remain in effect. And basically what this does is, because laws change, things change, sometimes we write things because I'm not a lawyer and I don't have an expertise in contract law. If something in here is not actually enforceable by local law, by Arizona law, we can strike that and put something in that's similar that does abide by the law. And it just, again, allows a little bit of flexibility in contracts. And then the last thing is just signatures. I have a section for myself and I have a section for the point of contact that I've been working with. Everyone signs off. I use DocuSign for electronic signing. People seem to really like it. And then we're off and running, and then we can start the creative process, which you can learn more about in my previous video on understanding your creative process. So this is what I use for small business contracting. I have found it works really well. It provides a lot of protections for myself, a lot of protections for my clients, just good parameters, good clarifications, and it's just another step in communicating well with the people you're working with. Thank you so much for watching today. I really hope that you learned something new or you enjoyed this video. I hope it made service contracts suck just a little bit less. Hopefully in a future video I'm going to be talking more about templating, and so I'll include some of this in that video as well. But if you enjoyed this, please be sure to like, be sure to subscribe. I'm planning on doing these videos every other Friday. So yeah, go ahead and hit subscribe and add me to your notifications so you don't miss another video. And that's all I have for today. So have a good one. Take care of yourself. Drink some water. Bye.